Hi everyone, Eric Cochran here, and welcome back to another episode of the Cochran Doctrine. Please like and subscribe to my channel down below. So, as I said in my previous vlog, I read Booker T. Washington's autobiography, Up From Slavery, this past February, in honor of Black History Month. Published in 1901, he was 45 years old at the time, and by that point had been born into slavery, watched this country tear itself apart and rebuild through the Civil War and Reconstruction, and then watched the Gilded Age redefine the American spirit. This all happening while he struggled to get an education and eventually founded Tuskegee University in the heart of the South, which its first black students built from the grounds up. You know, I'm sure we've all heard a classic old saying that goes, there are two types of people in the world: those who either look at a glass half empty or half full. And 120 years ago, at the turn of the century, of the two most famous African American spokespeople, we had W.E.B. Du Bois, who looked at it half empty, and Booker T. Washington, who looked at it half full. A brief juxtaposition of the two. At nearly 12 years older, Washington was born into slavery in Virginia. Du Bois was born in Massachusetts in 1868, i.e., after the Civil War. Washington believed in the free market, saw the economic resurgence and prosperity America underwent after the Civil War, and believed that with education and hard work, Black Americans had the ability to lift themselves up. He was a prime example. He lived by example, dedicating his whole life to inspiring his people to do the same. This, of course, coinciding at a time, as I've previously covered in another vlog, where millions were flocking here to the United States, seeking better opportunities. I am sure that Washington noticed that. Du Bois, on the other hand, was by all standards a communist who condemned the free market. While Booker T. Washington became very close friends with Theodore Roosevelt during his presidency, never gave up hope, and told Black Americans that they were better off than any black people anywhere else in the world, Du Bois eventually rejected his citizenship and moved back to Africa. The Civil War era 160 years ago, of course, marked the beginning of the modern two-party system between Democrats and Republicans. The modern Republican Party was, of course, birthed out of the abolitionist movement, with Abraham Lincoln serving as the first party president. For many years, African Americans were staunchly loyal to the party they saw as their liberators. Of course, ideologies change and new issues come about with time. But well over half of what the two parties stand for today, I would argue, was drawn over the course of the Gilded Age, concluding with the first two major Republican and Democratic administrations of the 20th century. Those presidents being Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson, respectively. Republicans are, of course, the party who advocate free market capitalism, private enterprise, lower taxes, and less regulation. Democrats are the party who are traditionally favored by the union/working class individuals, advocating for higher taxes and regulation on large businesses/corporations for the sake of workers. Theodore Roosevelt supported the growth of large businesses and at the same time supported the buildup of our nation's military, especially our Navy. Of course, strong national defense is synonymous with the Republican Party as well. At the same time, Roosevelt did his share of reforming labor laws and improving conditions for workers, which he often doesn't get enough credit for, if you ask me. But Woodrow Wilson, however, was far more in favor of workers' rights and government checks on big businesses. He instituted income taxes, founded the Federal Reserve, and of course strengthened antitrust laws. Despite the century-long segregation that existed after the Civil War, half of which constituted Booker T. Washington's life, these 50 years are a long-forgotten era where Black Americans don't receive enough credit for the progress they made. Many Black Americans today may ridicule Booker T. Washington's 1895 Atlanta Compromise as a sign of continued subservience. But blacks were already making enormous strides as Republican Party members in the South living under Democrat-enforced segregation. When the Civil War ended and slaves were set free, less than 5% were literate. Of course, there had been strict laws in place preventing slaves from learning how to read. By 1900, literacy had risen to 50% among blacks, a tenfold increase in one generation. Many of the nation's historically black colleges were founded in this era, most notably Washington's Tuskegee Institute in the heart of Alabama. Initially, Tuskegee was created to teach former slaves industrial trades, like brickmaking, construction, and advancements in farming techniques, which could ultimately grow into entrepreneurial ventures. Such skills Washington saw as much more valuable than the classical education offered by an Ivy League institution up north. Sound like a familiar conversation that many parents, even today, have with their children? Trade school versus college? Having just completed reading Candace Owens' book, Blackout, she cites that 5 years after the Atlanta Compromise in 1900, Booker T. Washington launched the National Negro Business League. Clearly, business networking, free of government intervention, was the only way blacks could build economic foundation, economic prosperity, and economic independence that Washington advocated for. There were 20,000 black-owned businesses in the U.S. in 1900, a number which doubled to 40,000 by 1914. All of this done by people born slaves or just one generation afterward, with none of the government assistance that we see today. There most certainly were black millionaires and entrepreneurs at the turn of the 20th century. One of Tuskegee's most famous faculty members at the time was none other than botanist George Washington Carver, whose research helped salvage the South's war-torn agricultural economy with peanuts and the many uses that came with them. There was Garrett Morgan, who invented the traffic light and the gas mask. There were women too, like Madam C.J. Walker, the first hair care entrepreneur. Why are we not teaching children today enough about these huge strides African Americans made within just a couple generations out of slavery? I'm even hearing reports that people want up from slavery pulled from bookshelves. These are facts the left doesn't want us to know. When I made a Facebook post in reference to the optimism Booker T. Washington had at the turn of the century back in February, a black left-wing friend of mine who I frequently debate with online steered the conversation in the direction of the Tuskegee experiment. I'm not denying that it didn't happen, but it just goes to show you they want the negative, not the positive, to shine. They don't want to think the way Booker T. Washington did. I'm Eric Cochran. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.